welcome to another episode of the B2B Leadership Podcast. My name is Nils Vinje, and today my guest is Jennie MacDougall. Jennie, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm psyched to be here.
I'm psyched to have you here, Jennie. Thank you so much for joining me. Before we get started, would you share with me and our audience the role that you're in today and the company that you're working for?
Sure. I am the Director of Engineering at Reprise. For those of you who don't know what Reprise does, we are a demo creation platform. So we help marketing teams and sales teams create no-code product tours that really help create product qualified leads. So we're able to essentially take screen captures and link them together, fully customize them without an actual demo environment or having to maintain a demo environment. And then you can use those for marketing materials or on a sales call.
Wow. Okay, that's pretty cool. I've been involved in a lot of demos over the years, and one of the hardest things to do is to put together something meaningful before something actually exists, or, in earlier stages and whatnot. Tell me, who are the types of companies and teams? I understand you're serving marketing teams, but is there a particular vertical niche or something that you focus on? Because that sounds like a really powerful solution.
Absolutely. And our customers are literally across the board.
Mm.
Um, you never really want to be on a sales call with bad internet, or no engineer really wants to be the engineer, the chosen one to maintain that demo environment.
Oh, I've
Uh,
been close to that, and I know exactly what you mean. Great point. Great point.
Absolutely. So really it's anyone trying to sell or market really anything. We use a Chrome extension, so that paired with our web app editor allows all the customization. So instead of on a sales call, for example, imagine your logo here. We just put their logo there
Hmm.
and put their color scheme and can anonymize all the data. So you don't have to maintain that demo environment for each one of your clients as you're selling. Um, and
Wow.
yeah.
That sounds pretty slick. I wish that was around a few times ago when I was in the seat doing demos and trying
Me
to build
too.
these. I spent a large part of multiple of my roles building the demo environment and building the demo to be able to show the demo, and I know how much that work that takes. That's amazing. That's
Absolutely.
amazing. All right, cool. So super interesting work that you're doing with Reprise. Love it. Now let's shift gears and talk about you. I would love to hear how you got into your very first leadership position.
Yeah. The first one was a wild ride. So I actually started the first company I joined. I was roughly the 30th employee right out of college, and didn't realize the company I was joining was a rocket ship. So we ended up doubling every year. I was there for 10 and a half years, but when we started, 30 employees, pretty much every 6 months, I was getting promoted because my boss was getting promoted and I would just kind of take over her role. Um, and then all of a sudden, I found myself managing one team and then a handful of teams. After a couple years of that, I joined the dark side and joined engineering. And pretty much everything I know about engineering, I learned on the job.
Wow.
So, with an international business background, I found myself on the engineering side.
That's okay. That's fascinating. All right. So the first job out of college, you just happened to join a company with 30 employees. And
Yep.
then, what was it? 10 years later, that like 5,000, or 5 years later, it was like 5,000 or something. That's
Yeah,
amazing.
so 10 years later, there were 5,000 employees.
Wow.
So some through acquisitions, and then in the end, we
Hmm.
got acquired.
Nice.
So it was a really exciting time to see and learn everything.
Yeah, I feel like we need that little banner at the bottom of this episode that says typical results, not typical. Your mileage may vary. Like,
Hashtag not normal.
hashtag not normal. Exactly. I've joined lots of startups. I know lots of people join lots of startups. They never made it anywhere close to there. And, it's so cool that you got to see that ride and be part of that growth and experience that from the get go. It doesn't happen very often. So that's really awesome. Um, All right. So in going through that growth stage, when you started managing your first team, right, as a result of your boss getting promoted, then you got promoted, then all of a sudden you're left with, okay, wait a second, now I'm responsible for this whole group of people. How did you navigate through that situation, being, not too long since you had graduated from school and in this incredibly fast growing rocket ship? Like, there must have been a lot of chaos and a lot of things going on.
Yes. I feel like I thrive when I control the chaos. You
Mm.
understand it's going to be chaotic, and you just kind of work within that. And one piece of advice that I learned early, thankfully, is that you don't need to have all the answers yourself.
Hmm.
Um, when you first start, I was terrified. Definitely imposter syndrome of I don't have all the answers. I don't know exactly what to tell someone in order to achieve their specific goals, or show them or tell them exactly how to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so understanding that I don't need the answers, but to try and help kind of foster that learning, and help them figure out what they might want to be when they grow up, and allow them those opportunities to try things out. What they think they might want to do, they might try it and really fast realize that that is not really for them.
Mm-hmm.
So giving those folks the opportunity to try things out, figure out what they want to do, and then really provide opportunities for them to grow within those boundaries.
All right, that's one powerful learning there, realizing that you didn't need to have the answers. And that is a core one. It's been echoed by lots of guests on the podcast. It's something I focus on heavily as a leadership coach and helping leaders develop and whatnot. So I'm curious, was there a pivotal moment that you learned this, or a conversation you had with somebody where you got insight into this? Because that wasn't how you were thinking up to that point, right? It had to shift in that moment.
Definitely. And it was actually grabbing beers with one of my former bosses. And he was like, I told you to do this, and I myself had no clue how you were going to do it.
This
And I
was
was
wait,
like,
this was like
really?
years later, like after
Yeah,
years later, sat down with your former boss from years ago, and then he
yep,
shared this nugget that he had no clue how
yep,
to do what he told you to do.
yep. And I was like, wait, you, all right, I get it.
I get it.
This, this is trickery, but I'm in.
But I could totally do that too, right?
Everyone can do it.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's awesome. And sometimes it can feel like that, like, trickery in a air quotes kind of nice way, right? That there's
Yes.
this magic curtain of, it's the wizard. Don't pay attention to the guy behind the curtain, right? It's
Yep.
like, just go about this. And then at some point you are granted this incredible wisdom to understand that you don't have to have the answers. It's like, no, that's part of the reason of this podcast is to learn from everybody else. It took you several years to learn that. And it only came as a result of having a conversation with your boss outside of the context of your normal work years after you were actually in the situation. And I find that
Yep.
fascinating. So
Absolutely.
what do you think is behind that, right? So you were going through this super fast growth company. Um, what do you think was behind the fact that this only was a realization or a learning or something you took away years later? The company didn't, you know, create an environment or said, "Hey, this is how to be a leader," right? Your boss at the time was thinking, "Hey, I got to tell Jenny to do this stuff and I don't know how to do it." But why do you think it is that nobody ever told you that that was the real case and one of the real secret sauce pieces to leadership?
Yeah, good question. I don't really know. I think that my approach is just kind of filling in the gaps and
Mm-hmm.
filling in the holes. Um, so really there were opportunities that just things needed to get done. And no one really knew necessarily how to do it. That's actually why I love startups.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you're creating all of these processes, and policies and stuff, and figuring it out with a different team and a new product, as you go. What worked before might not work this time. Um, So trying things out and just really taking full advantage of any opportunity thrown your way. Give it a
Yeah.
shot. The
I,
worst you
I
can do is fail.
Right. And then
And
there'll
then
be
try
another
again.
opportunity next to solve the next problem, right? And that echoes many of the same things I love about startups as well. Is just there is no there's no one set path. There's no one perfect thing that if you don't do it this way, you're toast. Like you'll never do it again. Like no, it's just about experimentation, and nothing works until it works. That's the best part. So I want to come
Absolutely.
back to what you said earlier about thriving when I control the chaos. Could you share a little bit more about what that means?
Yeah, so even in my role now, about a little over a year ago, we had 8 employees, and
Hmm.
now we have 150.
Wow.
So once again, joined an early stage startup, and off we go.
If anybody's paying
So
attention here, whatever
at,
company you join, just follow Jenny and go join wherever she joins if you want to go on a rocket ship ride. I think you've proven you've had the ability to catch these at the right time.
I have been very fortunate,
Yeah.
very lucky,
Yeah.
and have had some really fun wild rides. Um, but because we are growing so quickly, I would say that one of the key things is hiring folks
Hmm.
that that you believe in,
Hmm.
that are great team players and cultural fits rather than the smartest person in the room.
Hmm.
Um, it's really not going to work out if you are the smartest person in the room and you can't communicate to the rest of the team. Um, so getting folks that are really want to collaborate and want to help each other out, and kind of not necessarily setting specific boundaries and letting those folks explore what they can and come up with solutions that may or may not have they've tried before or have worked before.
Yeah, love it. And setting those boundaries and then the exploration. It's like, I'll play within these realms and have a lot of fun. There's no roboticness. This is not you have to do this and you can only do this and whatever. It's no, within this playground, go to
General
town.
idea.
Yeah,
Yeah.
have some fun, right? Um, well, you said earlier that you know that it's chaos, and that's different than someone going into an environment where all of a sudden chaos is a surprise. So, how does knowing that the environment that you're in is chaos, shape how you approach it from a leadership perspective?
Yeah. I would say that every team kind of has their own way of working.
Hmm.
So within that team, you should know kind of what their strengths and what their weaknesses are. Whenever you're given a team a project and you know it's not necessarily their strength, there's going to be some chaos in there as they're learning and figuring it all out. So making sure that they have the support and the tools to succeed, um, but kind of including that unknown
Hmm.
into all of the estimation and planning and everything, and allowing them again to try things out,
Yeah.
um, and making sure, of course, the chaos doesn't grow too big or go
Yeah.
off the rails.
Hmm.
Um,
But knowing it's
Checking
there
in
is it's just going to be there, right? It's
and
just a
just
fact.
embracing it.
Yeah, embrace it. I love that word because a lot of times what you can find in startups or in larger organizations is there's an expectation that chaos won't be there or that chaos is a bad thing, and the reality is the opposite. If you know it's there, it just is. It's not good or it's not bad. It just is. Is that
Exactly.
you see that way too?
Absolutely. And I think any environment where there might not be perceived chaos, there
Yeah.
probably is a lot kind of in the background
Yeah.
behind that curtain.
Yes.
So at least if you bring it to the forefront, you can talk about it. That's why we have retro at the end of every sprint. Kind of pick out the most chaotic pieces,
Yeah.
and figuring out how to smooth that process a little bit more, without, of course, trying to boil the ocean and take on way too much in a given 2 week period.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's wonderful. Um, All right. So coming back to you learned everything you know on the job, right? You went over to the dark side, as you said, to the engineering side of the house, and you've never left. So obviously there was a good fit there. What is it about the engineering side from a leadership perspective that you just love and have passion for and have been doing this work for now a long time?
Yeah, I would say I love the people I work with. Seeing the excitement in, especially the more junior engineers, um, the excitement of figuring out how to do something or learning something new, or we do at Reprise, we do continuous deployment. So we're deploying between 15 and 20 times a day. Um,
Wow.
and our new hires are actually deploying to production on day one. So being able to see that excitement of someone who's like, typically, oh, yeah, I joined a company. Today was just a bunch of meetings.
The HR enrollment period. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Like here, they get their hands in the code, they make some small changes, and at the end of the day, they see them and they're like, wow, I'm already making an impact. And just seeing that like fire in them and kind of stoking that fire to learn and grow and really just become incredible engineers as they go on their journey.
That's wonderful. I mean, day one, pushing code to production, that's a pretty big feat in and of itself. I commend you for setting up an environment where that is the norm. That's really cool. Love it. Um, Now, you talked a little bit earlier about, helping people figure out what they want to be when they grow up. And I know it's not always the easiest thing to do. It's not always the easiest conversation to have. There's a lot wrapped up in it that is often way outside of our view as leaders. So I'm curious about the types of situations that you've been in with some of your team members, either at Reprise or other companies in the past, when it comes to helping them figure out where they want to go in their career, what they want to do. What have you seen, as a common trait, and then how have you approached it to help them grow and develop and really kind of take control themselves?
Yeah. Um, so I would say that most people don't necessarily know what they want to do. Obviously, I would say that most engineers are like, yes, I want to keep coding, but there's many different avenues to take. At Reprise, we have a career lattice rather than a ladder that kind of allows you to go a few different ways. Um, and many engineers kind of see it as okay, I'm a software engineer, and then a senior, then a principal, and then a chief architect or the CTO somewhere. Um, in many organizations, kind of as you grow and do that, you could end up not coding anymore and being much more people oriented than kind of hands on keyboard. So I would say that the biggest thing is figuring out if that is something that you want.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there are also many people who think they want that until they do it. So, one thing I have done in the past that has worked out well is that pretty much as soon as someone is interested in managing somebody else, obviously, once they get kind of to that level, um, allowing that to happen. So, we have co ops from Northeastern that we've worked with, as well as a handful of more junior engineers. So, I have in the past let some more senior folks who might be interested in leading teams and managing people try it out. Give them one or two more junior engineers and see how it goes. In one case, I let them try it out, and 2 weeks later, they were like, "Listen, that was good, but that was terrible. I had no time to actually get my own work done." And I was
Mm-hmm.
like, "Yeah, that can be the case
That
sometimes. Like,
happens. Yep.
is is that still something we're thinking about?" Um, and being able to let them try it in a safe environment, a brave environment where it's okay to give it a shot and
Yeah.
then reevaluate and then move forward given those results.
That's wonderful. And trying things out like that in a safe environment without having to go through well, you have to actually get promoted into the position officially, and then you get to
And
figure out whether or not you like this. Like, kind of
and
recipe
then
for
realize it's
disaster right
terrible.
there. Right. But experimenting with it to get a taste, and sometimes it's going to hit and sometimes it's not, and that's okay. But better to know, especially for you and the org, like where the interest lies. And again, it's not good or bad whether or not someone wants to go down that path. It just is what each person is, designed to do or really interested in doing.
Absolutely.
So I'm curious about the career lattice. Can you share a little bit more about that? He says not a ladder, it's a lattice. Share a little bit more about what that means.
Yeah. So essentially, for the engineers, there's a few different points where you could go more technical or a more managerial path. And kind of where that diverges is where a handful of folks try the people management, or at least understand better,
Hmm.
and can kind of shadow some folks into their daily lives.
Yeah.
Um, and sometimes it involves, as I said, like trying things out. Other times it's more kind of introspective of figuring out, if they break down their daily tasks,
Hmm.
what they love
Mm.
and what they don't like so much. I call it a donut exercise, where essentially you make like a half a donut on a piece of paper. What you really love to do is kind of the donut hole. And as you go further out, it's what you don't love so much. So, what
Nice.
you love, what you're okay with, and what you'd rather not do.
Yeah.
And figuring out how to move more things towards the center,
Hmm.
and then really getting rid of the stuff that's on the outside, whether it be delegating to somebody else or reevaluating if those processes or those tasks are really needed at all anymore.
Hmm. And are those things that, you're working with your team members and your engineers to go through that exercise? What's the response that you get when they spend the time to go through this? Because it's kind of a self-reflective exercise, right? You're not saying, here's your donut and here's all the pieces of it. You're saying, here's a setup of a donut. I want you to fill out what this means. What kind of a engagement and response do you get when they go through that?
Yeah, I would say at first, because the first instruction without anything else, I just say, take a sticky note and for every single task you do in a day, write it down.
Nice.
And they're like, well, this is ridiculous. What
Yeah.
am I doing?
Uh-huh.
And I'm like, no, it'll be fun.
Just trust me.
And yeah, they roll their eyes. It's fine. So then from there, I explain kind of what we're doing, where to put those pieces. And at the end, they're like, huh. Because if you take a step back and look at it, some
Hmm.
folks are loving what they're doing.
Yeah.
All of their sticky notes are near the middle and they're super excited about most things. And other folks, you're like, huh,
Hmm.
most of their stuff is on the outside. Like,
Yeah.
there's a lot of conversation to be had from that probably 10-minute, 15-minute exercise. Um, why are so many things on the outside? Is there
Hmm.
things we want to pull towards the center to make them more enjoyable? Or are you realizing like what you're doing every day just isn't what you love?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's fine.
Yeah.
And we can figure out kind of what to do from there.
That's awesome. And I love the exercise of, getting a bunch of things that are right in front of your face, out in front, and physically written down, and then taking a step back and looking at it. And I'd be surprised if anybody ever doesn't see anything that jumps out. Like, oh, I didn't even realize that. And I've been swimming in this, non existent donut hole for a very long time. And no wonder it doesn't feel very good.
Absolutely. And even when you do it within, when I did it, the first time I did it within Scrum teams,
Hmm.
and folks were able to just swap tasks. Someone's like,
Oh,
oh, I really enjoy doing that. I'll take that from you. So it really worked out actually a lot better than I originally thought it might.
that's fantastic. And I mean, that's a great testament to lining up the work that gets done to the strengths that individuals have. And everybody's wired to see the world a different way and to do things a different way. And what a cool exercise to do that with a group of people and let everybody see, okay, what's on the outside of your circle and what would I take from that? That's cool. I'm going to bring that into my donut hole in the center. That's really a fantastic exercise. Love it. And it's all
Yeah.
centered around donuts. So if you have donuts
I'm
in the meeting too, even better, right?
It was originally an onion, and I was like, "Listen, I don't do
Oh,
onions. Donuts, though.
yeah. Because
I can
then
get behind donuts."
yeah, totally. Then yeah, because you can't bring a bunch of onions to a meeting and say we're gonna. Yeah, no. But donuts always a hit. Always a hit.
Definitely.
That's awesome. That's fantastic. Um, Curious for your thoughts on the on this in this development piece. Like this is clearly all being driven by the individual, where their time is spent, what they like to do, and then you're helping to facilitate the conversation to help them see the patterns of what's working really well and perhaps what could be changed or shifted and whatnot. There's a phrase that I use all the time called everybody is the CEO of his or her career. And I would love to get your take on that. And does that apply in this kind of situation? Is that what you're trying to foster, something along those lines? Or is it a different perspective that you have when you hear that phrase?
I would totally agree with that. Um, I would say that my role is to kind of show an engineer or an individual kind of the different options,
Hmm.
and the different paths, and they could even create a totally different one that has never existed before. Um, but I don't know what their true passions are, or what they really get from doing certain exercises or working on certain bugs or features. Um, and I'm not going to do the work for them. So
Hmm.
having them really own their journey is super important.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, I could kind of give everyone the same exercise and the same treatment and go, great. Step one is this, step two is this,
Hmm.
but
Hmm.
not everyone will find that exciting or enjoyable or want to do that.
Yeah.
So they really need to own it. Um, the I would say the one thing that I do try and encourage everyone is like try everything. Um,
Hmm.
in many cases, it's not so bad to, ask forgiveness rather than permission. Give it a shot, see what happens. And obviously, in a startup, we don't want too many bugs getting out to production,
Yeah.
but kind of within an acceptable range, give something a shot, see how it goes, and we can keep iterating.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I love how you said your role is to show the options in the past that exist and even help facilitate if one doesn't exist and they come up with that. But ultimately, they're in charge, right? They're the one
Exactly.
who's driving this and you're facilitating this just like you did with the donut exercise. You can't give them the answers to that, but you can absolutely help them work through it and ask them some powerful questions to reflect on it and look at their situation a little bit differently. That was wonderful
Exactly.
advice. Wonderful advice. All right, Jenny. So, last question here. If you could go back in time, knowing everything you know today, but sit down with your younger self, fresh out of school, undergrad, in that startup when you got into that first technical people leadership position, and you could have a conversation with your younger self, what advice would you share?
Um, I would say just try things. Just say yes. Um, you might be terrified. You might have no idea what you're doing, but take every opportunity and just give it a shot.
Yeah.
Um, I am so grateful that my first manager kind of saw something in me and was like, she can definitely I will take her under my wing and we are going to crush it. Um, and just having that support to give it a shot. I was
That's
managing a
wonderful.
team. I had never managed a team before. Like,
Yeah.
we'll figure this out.
Yeah.
Um, so really just taking every opportunity and running with it. And really not being afraid of failure or afraid that, yeah, I don't know.
Don't be afraid. That's awesome.
Don't be afraid.
Wonderful. Yeah. Just say yes. Take every opportunity. Not be afraid. Wonderful advice. And whether you're in a startup or in a large organization, I think that advice 100% applies. Right. Sometimes we think of the this kind of environment or this kind of innovation or this kind of experimentation only in the startup world because that's what it fosters and what it's kind of driven by. Reality is it exists in any role, anywhere, inside of any organization virtually, probably except the military. Probably not going to want to do some of
That's
these
true.
things in the military and experiment. Don't experiment there. As long as you're not in the military or working in a factory, it's fair game. Is that fair?
Definitely. Yes, absolutely.
Wonderful. All right, Jenny. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk with you. Thank you for sharing your experience, your advice, your wisdom, and just some wonderful, just great lessons that we can take away about how to successfully navigate either first-time leadership positions or in a director level position, working with a team of engineers and bringing donuts to the table, and just how powerful that whole experience can be. So I loved hearing that. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you for having me. This was so much fun.
My pleasure. All right, take care, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks.